Welcome everybody to Bobby Talks, ... Those dots are there for a reason to let you know that there's always more to the story. I don't know if you guys can notice where I'm at right now, but I am on location. I'm sitting with a lifelong friend. I mean, it's been since 7th grade.
Yep, I'd say middle school, definitely.
Middle school for sure. I've known this girl since middle school. One of the best basketball players I've seen in person, as far as, especially in our small little towns. She is a wife, a mother, the assistant coach, the associate coach to Indiana Tech University, Kylene Biggs. Kylene, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you.
How you doing?
Doing good. Happy to be here. Glad that you made the trip to Fort Wayne today.
Yeah, I felt like it was worth the trip coming here. I'm not a big fan of the Zoom just because the audio and the technical difficulties that we have with it, and I feel like you're somebody who has a story that's kind of worth sharing, just because of the complexities of who you are and some of the quote-unquote titles that come with you, but those titles don't make up who you are.
Definitely.
So let's just kind of start the story where we should. A couple weeks back, Kylene hit me up on Facebook, kind of showing me some love on where we were at with Bobby Talks. It might have been after the first episode or the second episode that we had. You said, Robert, I love the show. I like what you're doing. If you ever want, and I just want to make sure I'm quoting you correctly, a biracial, right?
Yep.
Lesbian.
Yep.
Christian.
Yep.
And basketball player and coach on your podcast, I'm Your Person. Did I quote you correctly?
Yes, that's pretty much right on it.
So those are all titles that most people with just one of those might face a challenge or a struggle growing up in life. You have the privilege of owning all three. And what I know about Kylene is that she owns them proudly. She doesn't shy away from anything. And maybe we should just start there with, you are somebody who, because of those titles, you have challenges and obstacles that have been faced in your life. Tell me, before we get into the challenges, tell me like the blessings in your life right now. Where you're at 33 years of age, you know, you have a daughter.
Yep.
Okay, tell us about your daughter, your family life, what you got going on.
Yeah, so I talk every day and joke that I get to do the best job in the world, right?
Sure.
I get to coach women's basketball at the college level, which is great. And I'm lucky enough to actually coach with my wife. And that's like crazy. Some people are like, you guys are nuts.
Yeah.
How do you
You would think that alone poses its own challenges.
Oh, definitely. Like, how do you do this? And we just want to win basketball games and change young women's lives,
sure.
right? So Jesse and I just celebrated our 2nd anniversary on August 3rd.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And Olivia, our little one, we just celebrated a year of her adoption.
Okay. On
July 23rd. So she's 3. She's every bit as sassy that you can imagine and sweet. She's a real life Sour Patch Kid.
Really?
We love her to death, but we get all the sass from her, of course.
What does what is the I guess, is there are you going to expand the family in the future?
Yes, I think so. We're definitely talking about it. And she needs a sibling. Oh Lord, she definitely needs a sibling.
Just to occupy some time so that gives you guys a break, right?
Yes, definitely. And she thinks she runs the world, right? And
as 3-year-olds do, yep.
Yep, and she gets to be around 16 to 18 college women basketball players that love her to death.
Sure.
We had one of our players got married this past weekend, and they were like, "Oh, Livy," and picking her up. I'm like, guys, she's going to forget how to walk. She's 3 years old. Stop holding her. But she just has that little look that.
What a great experience, though, for her to grow up in this environment, and she's going to grow up in this environment the rest of her life. I mean, it's going to give her advantages. To just communication-wise, it's going to give her advantages athletically. I mean, you're going to have to like slow her down from aging because she's going to be around so many older people and influences. But I can't imagine. I remember I used to go to like the gym with my grandpa and shoot a basketball round. I can't imagine just being around here all day. How cool that must be for a 3-year-old, little girl. So.
Yes, she loves it, and she's got a little whistle when she comes to practice. And
so everybody knows she's here?
Everybody knows she's here. I picked her up from daycare a couple weeks ago, and Tammy, her daycare lady, said, Livy was telling one of the kids today, be better.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's just the typical 3-year-old. She probably hears that.
Yeah, I can see the T-shirts now. Just be better, Liv says.
Yep. Period.
So, all right, let's dive into that a little bit if we can. You said this is the 1-year adoption anniversary of that?
Yes.
Okay, so and your wife's name is Jessie, correct?
Yes.
So when you and Jessie were going into the process of adopting, like being that Jessie is white and you are black, was there a talk about race at all? How did you go about the selection process? I don't know if it's like, I know it's not like Tinder where you're going through a bunch of kids, but how does it work? I'm just out of curiosity. How did you guys have those conversations with each other?
Well, with this process, at the time I was a head coach at Lawrence Tech.
Okay.
And this is actually through a family member.
Sure.
On my side. So I knew there were some problems, but I didn't know. I'm always the type of person that like kids come first, or
Yep.
if something happens, like you just have to step up.
Sure.
And pretty much, I got a call. I was playing noontime basketball, right? I got a call at work, and I missed it, and then I called back, and they were like, hey, Olivia needs a place to stay.
Sure.
And I can have her to your house tonight.
Okay.
So think about that.
Yep.
You're playing basketball, you get a call that this 5-month-old has nowhere to go.
Sure.
She's not being taken care of properly, and I have nothing.
Right.
Right? Like, we got her a couple weekends before that just because I knew things weren't, like, just wanted the kid to be safe.
Sure, yeah.
So I'm like, okay, what time will you be here? They said, we'll be there at 6 o'clock. So ran to the store, went to Meijer, got everything I thought that, what can I do
For a
right
5-month-old, what you would need, sure.
Yeah, and obviously, she's the first child. I don't know what I'm doing, right?
Yeah.
And I'm the head coach at a school that has a part-time assistant and a GA that are 20 years old, 21 years old, and luckily my work was awesome.
Yeah.
They said, do what you need to do, take time to find a daycare. Now she's 5 months, so we'd be conditioning at 6:30 a.m. She's up anyway, sitting in the rocker, you know, just watching. Like, she's known basketballs from a very young age. So just a crazy experience. And Jessie and I were pretty fresh in our relationship at that point.
Okay, so was that something that you presented to her then? Like, hey, this is happening right now and I'm going to step up to the plate. Like, will you be a part of this? Like, you don't have to be type thing? Or was this something that, like, she was ready for already and it didn't happen?
We went into our relationship, you know, when you're started to dating,
Sure.
when you're 31 years old, you start talking about everything right off the bat.
Yeah, as you do, sure.
Yep, and I just said, hey, like, this kid might need somewhere to go. But I totally didn't say, like, if
you have to be a part of
out,
this, yes.
I totally understand. And from day one, she was like, all right, what do you need? Let's do this. In our relationship, we live 3 hours apart. Southfield, Michigan to
really?
Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Yeah.
It's not like she was there and I was like, okay, can you help me with this? She did her best to be hands-on or come every other weekend. But I just, like, I knew our relationship was going to work when she was like, I got you.
What a blessing for you, I mean, for Liv, for you to be there and to take that challenge on, like, no questions asked, just like, yeah, I'm going to do whatever I have to do for this kid. Like, that's so commendable, and I can't say a lot of people would do the same thing. So, like, I mean, just that's unbelievable.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, how did you do that? I'm like, listen, there's not another option.
There's no other option.
I'm a type of person, like, if it needs to be done and what's best for that kid, right?
Yeah.
It's not about you always.
No, you're right. And so let's fast forward then. So then now that Olivia is a part of your life and it's just going to be that way, and Jessie and you, everything's going well, and now you have the marriage and you have the family. You guys are both coaching here at Indiana Tech. I don't know if I've said that or not, but we are on the campus. You guys have to be uber competitive with each other. Because I'm assuming Jessie's played a little ball herself?
Yeah, she actually played at Northern Iowa.
Okay.
So she's that D1 skinny lefty shooter.
So she's a shooter. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, she makes her money shooting threes all day long.
Yeah.
Where we joke all the time, like, I'm the more like scrappy person looking to see. So we'll play one-on-one and she's like, you can't offensive rebound. And I'm like, what? That's not even an option. Like.
So who's more competitive though? Would you say you are or she is, or it's similar?
I think it depends. It's pretty similar, especially that we coach together. Like, we want to win, right? Like, so we're both, like, trying to make the best out of our players and get them to do what's best for our team. But when we do stuff like, you know, in the backyard.
I'm just saying, you're in the driveway, it's one-on-one. Who's winning most of the time, but who's the most competitive on the two?
I would say I am.
Oh, okay. I can see that, though. You've been that way. So, Kylene grew up, we graduated in 2005, both of us, right?
Yes.
So she grew up in a small town of Morenci, and everybody that's probably watching this knows that city and that locale. She was a all-star basketball player there. Were you a four-year varsity starter?
Yes.
Okay. That kind of gives you a window of who she was at that time. I can remember my first kind of idea of you on the basketball court. You were just so much better than everybody else on our team. We went to Sand Creek, so Morenci and Sand Creek were rivals. Except we didn't win a lot when it came to the girls' basketball game. I think we had a couple competitive games, though.
We did. We had some very competitive games.
Yeah.
Just sorry you guys never got over the hump. But it was, we're 10 minutes away.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
So most people now don't see the gym packed for a high school girls' basketball game. No,
unfortunately,
our gyms were packed.
Yeah. It was on both sides of the aisle there. What was crazy is that I remember your first couple steps when you were dribbling the lane. I'm just like, that is so quick. And I remember thinking, like, we used to debate, like, she's beating that dude on the team, she's beating that dude on the team, she's damn well beating that dude on the team. Like, we knew that you were somebody that could play the game, and then you went on to play it at the next level and coach. I mean, did you know from day one that this is what you wanted to do and this was the dream, or when did you realize that basketball could start paying bills?
I think probably sophomore year.
Okay.
Like really being
of high school.
In high school,
okay.
Yeah. I thought, you know what, like this, I'm going to be first generation,
sure.
Right? Like I have to find a way to get to college,
yep.
Get that college degree, and see what goes from there. And at the time, scholarship was important.
Sure.
So I knew I had to put in that extra work, doing different things, and luckily I got a scholarship
And Tiffin, so Tiffin did, okay.
Yep, Tiffin was NAI, just moving to D2 at the time.
Okay, I was curious how those scholarships plus those grants, some places, because I went to Defiance College for football, they hit me with a lot of grants, but they didn't hit me with any scholarships because they can't, so I was just curious how that worked.
Yeah, so they were able to give some athletic money, and luckily, like some Pell Grants and different things were able to help me as well.
Sure.
I was lucky to get out of there with only about $8,000 in student loans.
I am nowhere near that. I'm way north of that number. That's incredible though. Kudos for you on that and congratulations. I just remember. I wish I would have got to see you play in college. I didn't get to see any of that because I was obviously doing my own thing and going to college. In Bowling Green and Defiance and kind of all over the map. But do you have any like famous or memorable moments or favorite moments that you had during college when you were playing? Like, you hit the drop back game winner. What do you have going on?
I just remember my senior year. I broke the single season assist record.
At the university?
At the university.
That's good.
And I hold the career assist record for the most assists in the career. So
wow.
I definitely enjoyed my time at Tiffin. Actually, this fall, I was supposed to get inducted to the Tiffin Hall of Fame.
Yeah, we were talking about that off camera. Like, that huge honor that would be. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen this year, but it is going to take place in the future?
Yes, it'll take place in the fall 21.
Great. So now will that move the next class back? So is there going to be like nobody was inducted in 2020, or are they going to still consider you a 2020 inductee?
They're still going to consider us a 2020 inductee.
Okay.
I haven't heard if they're just going to kind of double it
and
maybe have a 21 class as well, and then it'll be a big party and celebration if they decide to do that, I think. But I know for sure it'll still be a 2020.
Okay, so then let me ask you this question. You leave Tiffin University in 2009?
I graduated in 2009.
Okay.
I stayed at Tiffin to get my master's.
Okay.
And to be a grad assistant and coach basketball.
And right away you were an assistant coach on that basketball team?
Yes.
And then you were there. How long were you there before you left to go to Kent State?
I was there for 5 years.
Okay, so pretty good chunk of change.
Yep.
Okay, and then Kent State you were there, and then were you were also the athletic trainer there?
Nope, I was just an assistant coach at Kent State for 2 years.
Okay.
And then after that, I got the head coach at Lawrence Tech.
Yeah. And then, so I guess fill the gap in then, so just so we can get there. You're at Lawrence Tech, you're the head coach, you leave there to come be an assistant coach. Does that have anything to do with the relationship, or is that just because, career direction? Like, tell me why that jump.
Yeah, 100% the relationship.
She could say it now.
I could say
at
it
that
now.
time.
We definitely fell in love, you know, and you didn't expect it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the exciting thing about not rushing it, right?
Sure.
We both are we're in our 30s before probably being in real serious relationships.
That's good.
And I just was like, oh dear, I'm this is going to happen.
Yep.
Like, we both knew it was going to happen. But we went a year apart.
Okay.
Both being head coaches, like, doing our thing. And it was great. Like, I enjoyed being a head coach 100%. But then we just got to the point, like, okay, we have a child now.
Right.
What are we going to do?
How is this going to be practical in our lives? Still be together and yet still function. Gotcha.
Definitely. And Indiana Tech's just a great place. I feel like they both welcomed us with open arms
Sure.
and said, listen, we want Kylene to be here too. We want you both to be here, and just said, hey, this is what we're going to do to make it happen.
Sounds like you've had a lot of support from your employers throughout the years. I mean, that's not a lot of people get that. So, I mean, now that she's the AD, and that is, I am allowed to say that, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's public knowledge. Okay, so she just got, Jesse, Kylene's wife, just got promoted to be the athletic director here. Congratulations and condolences, Jesse.
100%.
Yeah, for sure. And so with that being said, what does that do for your, admirations of being a head coach someday? Is it not off the table because you never know what the future looks like, or is it something that you're comfortable putting in the background for now? And I don't want to say background, that sounds so ugly, but you know where I'm going with this. Like, you were somebody that was pursuing being a head coach. You had that itch. I'm a head coach of just boys varsity basketball at the high school level. I can't imagine coaching at the collegiate level. Where's your next step with that in your mind, and are you just okay where you're at right now and see what happens?
I'm content right now.
Sure.
I think that's the biggest thing is we don't look too far ahead.
Okay.
Right? Thank you, COVID, for
Yeah.
really making that evident.
Yeah.
But I just enjoy the moment.
Okay.
And I've always kind of been that person, like, soak in what you're doing. And my biggest thing is I've wanted to do something to influence and impact
Yep.
kids. And being from Morenci, like, you've always kind of, like, you're in a small town. What can you do?
Yeah.
And I've always had coaches that have been that mentor, or that I talk to this day, that are like, hey, are you okay? What are you up to?
Good. Just
checking in. And I feel like that's what I want to do.
The role of a coach is more than just coaching X's and O's and fundamentals. You know that more than anybody. It's, you wear so many hats and you're proud to wear them, but you don't always have the answers when you need them, when you feel like you need them. But I think the thing to take away from it is you don't need to have all the answers, but you need to just be there for a person. And it sounds like you had that growing up. I want to kind of transition, if we can, into your time in Morenci when you were growing up, right?
Yeah.
You were, first of all, how many black girls or black boys or Hispanics, like how many outside of the Caucasian demographic went to Morenci, would you say?
Oh, geez. During that time,
Yeah.
I think you could count on two hands.
Okay.
I mean, 5 to 10 of, different races.
Sure. So 5 to 10 different races.
Yeah.
That's the same type of, I would say, percentage ratio at Sand Creek. We had the Campbell family, which was a buddy of mine. And then we also had, there was a couple other Hispanic families, but other than that, it's majority, white. Tell me about any struggles that you might have had, especially with what's going on in the world today, with everybody seems to races to the forefront right now. Just tell me what, if at all, if you had any struggles in that route, just being, biracial and the challenges that presents.
Yeah, definitely. I think at that time, I didn't have many.
Okay.
I was lucky enough to be good at sports.
Sure.
And that's kind of what I bought into, right?
Yeah.
And not saying people liked me for that reason.
But that kind of does help, especially at an early age. It helps you kind of create friendships, and yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it definitely allowed me to be involved.
Yeah.
And it allowed people to be like, oh, okay, like, who is this person, or what can they do?
Right.
And probably help some coaches invest, to
Sure.
get me to where I am today.
Yeah.
But I never felt like, now, you know how it is, people like mad or like trying to maybe throw the N-word, or
Yeah.
but I never really let that stuff disrupt me.
Were you a victim of that type of racism at any point in your life growing up?
Not terribly.
Okay.
I would say not at all. I think here and there, but more of like immature and mad.
Sure.
Right? Like, I don't think, not saying people didn't mean it.
Right, but
but
no.
I think just, like if you're fighting with somebody. But,
And then it just spits out and gotcha.
Yeah. Not that that's okay
No.
by any means. But I never felt like, oh my gosh.
The intent, wasn't there to harm. It was just a foolish immaturity moment. And I totally understand what you're saying. Now, what about into your adult life? Have you seen the ugly sides of it more, less, same? I mean, if the answer is no, that's great. But if it's not, I'm just curious, where we're at with that.
I think it's just becoming more evident, right?
Okay.
Like, I went to Morenci, and I was still growing up in an all-white neighborhood.
Sure.
So I didn't know of what was on the outside. So going to Tiffin, it was like, wow, like, what's really happening in the world?
Right.
Or there's several people that look like you, or there's different things. I was just naive.
Right.
Right? Like,
yeah.
I grew up thinking, like, you date boys, and I dated boys all through high school, even in college. You know, like, we all go through that confused phase.
Yeah.
But of being like, what is this?
Sure.
You know, like, trying to figure myself out. But I kind of grew up, I would say, like, this is who you're supposed to be.
Right.
Right? With
right.
that mentality.
So you had an idea of, all the pressure. But that's got to have some type of pressure on you. I mean, maybe not something that's visible and that you could put an identity to at the moment. But, like, I can't imagine that you must have been confused. Like you said, you were going through those things where you're like, what's going on here? Because most of the time, it's just kind of like the status quo. You go to school, you're a girl, you go out with boys, right? That's just how it kind of works. And I think it's changing now, but, like, unfortunately that stigma kind of sticks with people, whether or not it's not like day one somebody gave you a pamphlet and said these are the things that you're supposed to do, but when you see only that, it does kind of have an impact on your life. So I don't know where I'm going with that, but so you were talking about, though, in your adult life, figuring that out. Tell me more about what you had going on there.
Yeah, I think once I figured out, like, this is who I am.
Sure.
Or this is what I'm going to do, right? Like, I've lost friendships.
Yeah.
I've lost several things from people, specifically from Morenci, that I don't have a relationship anymore.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, it sucks and it hurts, but I finally have gotten myself to a place to love myself.
Right.
You know?
Yep.
But you go through that, especially when you are a Christian woman.
Yeah.
You're like, it's not supposed to be this way. Like, please pray, like, Lord, take this away, you
Right.
know? And I've had, people write me letters that you're going to hell, this is not okay.
You have.
Yeah, and I'm a type of person, I didn't read it.
Right.
Right? Like, I was dating Jesse at the time. I'm like, you can read this, but I don't want to resent these people.
Right.
Right? Like, they helped me grow up and be the person I am. Like, I can't do it. Like, I think there's something good in the heart somewhere, and I always joke, like, people really believe that, right? Like,
right.
I think there's a long list of people that are going to heaven. Like, I always joke, I know you just went to Vegas, right?
Yeah.
There's probably somebody out there with the sign that said,
more than one,
accept the Lord or you will go to hell. And
they're in Adrian. They're on every corner in Adrian right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is accurate. Like, do this or you will go to hell.
Yeah.
Seriously, people, you really think that's the way to get people to come to the Lord? Right?
You hit that. So that's so perfect. Like, when, especially even right now, not even using religion with anything. And you're talking about when you try to present facts on COVID, or you try to present any type of information to somebody who's right-leaning or left-leaning, they're so emotionally based now that it's one of those things where they don't want to come to a compromise or even listen to what's being said because everything is so out of emotion.
Right, 100%. And I've even had people in my family that I'm like, listen, Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
Right? Like, just the statement of it. And then, like, somebody very close to me in my family is like, no, all lives matter.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't know where I'm going to go with this. But I'm like, listen, yes, all lives do matter, people, but
right.
they cannot matter until Black Lives matter.
Until you accept. Absolutely. And I think this time around, maybe 6 years ago when that mantra first came up with the Ferguson and Baltimore riots type thing, I think there's a lot more people on board and understanding and at least able to have the conversation now, where before it didn't really feel like that. So even though it's a slow process, and even though it still looks like its ugly head of racism is winning, I really do think progress is winning. I really do. I know that sounds like maybe a ass backwards type thing right now, but it does feel like, imagine this, all these things taking place 50 years ago. The amount of support that right now that movement has from all races, from all ages, all creeds, all sexes, to me, it's been kind of, at times you see some of the pictures of the thousands of peoples at these marches, and they all look different.
Right.
That to me is progress, and progress is winning. It just doesn't get the headline right now.
Right. I couldn't agree more. And it's great to see people from all types of races realize it.
Sure.
Right? The injustice of it all. And it's still, though, people like just have the conversation. Like,
Yeah.
it's like Colin Kaepernick, right? People are still so mad at him.
Yeah.
But I think more people are like, oh my gosh, I understand why he did it now.
Right.
Right? Like, they understand he's not kneeling just to be a
Right.
butthead.
Right.
No. Like, police brutality is a real thing.
Right.
Like, so
What would you... I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to... What would you say to the people that try to confuse the message right now with the rioting and the looting and the constant violence that seems to be continuing to take place in some of these cities, Seattle, Chicago. Chicago's really going through it right now. Portland went through it a couple weeks ago. To me, they're completely separate issues in the sense of like anybody who thinks that just because you agree with one thing doesn't mean that everything that comes with that movement is righteous or okay. Where are you at on that? Where do you fall with these rioters and looters? Can you help clean up the waters a little bit for people that might have a confusion on that?
Right. I think the hard thing with some of those rioters and looters, they're not the people that want the Black Lives Matter movement to go on.
See,
right?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
So that's where I struggle with. Like, don't put that Black Lives Matter with those people. Right? Like, there's the thing.
They're
like,
opportunists. They've got their own agenda. It's something completely different altogether.
It's something completely different. It's very easy to mix them, though.
Yeah.
In my opinion, and it's all happening at the same time.
And there's no one wearing, like, uniforms.
Right.
So you don't know who's a part of what, but you know what the message is. So that's where I guess my little... I've been getting annoyed lately is that people will say, yeah, but, and then they follow it up with the rioters, the looters, and it's like, no. You know what the message is. You know what the message is. Please don't, you're smarter than that. Don't do that. And then those things, like, I fully believe that people that are out there, like that one person that just took down that 92-year-old woman, send their ass in jail.
Right.
Like, they need to go to jail. I don't care what creed, color you are, or what's going on. Like, that's not okay. Just because the opposite of peace is violence doesn't mean you need to go there. There's got to be some type of middle ground. So before we go forward, okay, there's so many more. We've jumped so much, Kylene.
Yeah.
Like there's just so many different avenues that we can go down with you that I want to talk about. First of all, I want to go back to kind of your upbringing a little bit, what your relationship was like with your parents. I want to touch on your faith and how that seems to clearly drive who you are. And I just want to touch on so much more that is, Kylene Biggs.
Awesome.
All right, cool. All right, welcome back, everybody, to Bobby Talks, ... I'm sitting here with Kylene Biggs. She is wife, mother, the assistant basketball coach at Indiana Tech University. We've been touching on a lot of things that is Kylene Biggs. She's got a lot of titles, but none of them more important than being a wife, being a mother. We've touched on those earlier in the show here. I wanted to kind of round back before we venture too much into some of these other issues or some of these other topics. I wanted to venture back about your growing up life. What it was like with your parents. You said you're biracial, so how does that work? Who's of what demographic? And tell me what it was like growing up in that household and some of the challenges that you might have faced just having two people that don't look the same to you.
Right. So my mother's white and my biological father is black.
Okay.
Now the crazy / trick thing is I've never met my biological father.
Okay.
So I've grown up with two white parents.
Sure.
My dad / stepdad has been there every step of the way. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But it's just growing up in a small town.
Yeah.
Both my parents, fortunately / unfortunately, are recovering alcoholics.
Okay.
So our childhood was rocky here and there. I have a younger sister and a little brother. My freshman year of high school, we actually had some things going on with arrests with my parents and different things. And I was lucky enough to stay in Morenci.
Yeah.
And with the family. And then my sister and brother were in foster care for a year.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So were you just old enough to be able to stay, or how did that work?
I was old enough, and I was involved in the church community quite a bit, and I just had friends that their mom was like, listen, they live down the street.
Sure.
We'll take Kai, and can we make this work?
Yeah.
And back then, I don't really remember any paperwork sort of stuff, which is weird.
Sure.
As much foster care paperwork I had to go through.
Really?
With Olivia.
Yeah.
But
you're on the other side of it now.
Yes.
So So as a kid, you don't really see all those things.
No, so it could have been crazy.
Yeah.
But I stayed with them pretty much my whole freshman year.
Okay.
And then my parents were able to get us back.
Great.
They actually divorced.
Okay.
My mom moved to Adrian, and my little brother lived with her.
Okay.
And then we stayed in Morenci with my dad just to finish out high school and go from there.
So when does faith knock on your door? Is it early in your life? Is somebody in the household religious and you guys go from there? Does it come later? How does that work?
At the time, neither of my parents were religious growing up at all.
Sure.
When I moved to Morenci, it was in 3rd grade, and I started playing hoopla, basketball.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Can you imagine? I was probably like tiny, but so just dribbling between everybody. But that's really where I got my friend group. And my best friend at the time, her dad was a pastor at the local church. So grew up kind of either staying the night with them or hanging out or going to church and just really getting involved. So that's how that community really like kind of embraced me, and I started getting involved with church.
So now at what age did you, I hate the term coming out, but like is there a better term? Did you start acknowledging that you are, somebody who's a lesbian, that you do have feelings towards the same gender or the same sex? Tell me, what age was that?
Honestly, I didn't start until college.
Okay.
Like, I really got to college and I was like, okay, like just trying to figure out everything, right?
Yeah.
From your dorms to who are your friends, who are your people. And then I just kind of started dating around, and I was still hiding, right? Like when I finally
when you were hiding, did you know? Or were you still in the process of kind of like finding out, like take me, before we go too far in it, but did you know when you were hiding, or? I
had an idea.
Okay.
Like, I don't think I knew at all until I got to college.
Okay.
And then just kind of hanging out and seeing other people. And then my first girlfriend, I just was like, what is it? Like, like you start like feeling all these things. And then, and I'm like, I never was attracted to a girl or anything.
Sure.
But then when I started dating women, I was like, okay, like there was so much more attraction really than dating guys. Yeah. Like I had the most beautiful boyfriend in high school, right? Like
she sure did.
He was precious.
Yeah.
Played football at Michigan, but I always we always kind of joke with my friends, like, if I didn't stick in that relationship, boom, red flag.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but then it just was like the attraction and the emotional level. Like I never had that throughout high school or any of my male relationships. Okay. So I would say really freshman to sophomore year.
So freshman, sophomore year, you decide that you're comfortable, coming out to people, telling people, this side of who I am now. How does the faith world embrace you? Do they open their arms the way that you would hope they would, or was there challenges that came from that?
There's definitely challenges that came from that. I honestly, in college, I didn't tell anybody until after college.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
Which is crazy. But
even though you had a girlfriend during college?
Even though I did, but nobody knew.
Okay.
Right? It was still kind of behind closed doors.
Did your girlfriend, was she out? Did people know? Or were
she
you guys?
Was not at the time. She kind of the same way, didn't really come out until after college as well.
Okay.
But I told my best friend, and I just cried, like a big baby, and she's like the best human being ever, my college best friend Megan, and she's like, oh my gosh, like she's like excited. Like she's such a dork. And we actually not to veer totally off subject, but we had a storm come through yesterday. I don't know if you guys got any
lost some power.
Our mailbox was flying off, our trash can blew, and my wife is like deathly afraid of storms. And we don't have a basement. Ooh. So my wife, Livy, and our dog are hiding in the closet. And Megan texts me, and I was like, oh my gosh, our mailbox blew off. And she's like, oh no. And she's like, what the hell? And then 3 text messages, she goes, how does it feel being back in the closet? I'm like, Max, you're not funny, but you're hilarious all at the same time.
That's a pretty good one.
But going back to losing relationships in the faith community, I was lucky enough when I went to Southfield, I attended a church called Life Church, and they always made me feel welcome. Okay. Or do you have questions, Kai? Or what can we do for you?
Sure.
But God loves everybody, right? Like, I love the people who are like, Jesus would not be happy with these protests. Are you kidding me? He'd be in the front lines of these protests.
Right.
These are the type of people that Jesus hangs out with.
Right, exactly.
He's not sitting at the table like, okay, cross your legs, use this fork. No, like he's
a doer.
Yes,
he's a doer.
100%. So, but with that being said, I pretty much lost my best friend from high school, which was hard because we went through every memory together, right? We played softball together, basketball, like went on vacation with her family, like we just had this relationship.
Sure.
Grew up around, she's had 2 younger kids, like, so that was the hardest. I remember telling her and my whole world crushed, and being like, oh my gosh, like, and it was so hard to keep it. Like, that was the hardest thing, but then after that, like a month after, I was like, oh my gosh, my heart is so like, whew.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I can just love.
You feel like you can breathe for the first time.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. And I didn't even tell her until I knew I was going to marry Jesse.
Yeah.
Like, we weren't engaged yet, but I was like, I can't get this woman out of my life. Like, this is who I want to be with.
Yeah.
And I need to start being honest to myself out loud and to everybody around me. So, and it's hard. We haven't found a church here in Fort Wayne yet.
Yeah.
But then COVID happened,
Yeah.
so we haven't really got to.
You haven't had that opportunity, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So, but it's been, like, I know where my heart is, so that's been the great thing.
I think that's the biggest thing with religion, spirituality, wherever you find your comfort, is it's very, I would say for me personally, I found peace, for the past better part of a decade now, in just knowing that I don't know, right? And for me personally, it's one of those things where I believe in a God, or the idea of a God, or gods, or whatever. I believe in something bigger than us. That's the spiritual part of me. I do reject like organized religion and things that come with that, and the stories and whatnot. I believe Jesus Christ was the greatest man probably to ever live. I believe he was a great prophet. I don't know about the magic parts of the stories or not, but I don't need to know.
Right.
Like, if they bring peace to so many people around the world, that's what I want for them. The only issue I take with religion is when your beliefs hinder other people's beliefs, or even go so far as to hinder their lifestyle. And I just think that's so wrong. So for you to be able to breathe finally, and, unfortunately you've lost some, relationships along the way, but I bet you've gained some too.
Yes, 100%. And people are like, thank you. Like, just an honesty standpoint. And I feel like I can reach more people.
Yeah.
From being open and honest and just kind of being an open book now. I think one thing with COVID and the protest has opened people's eyes to so many things, right? From people, like, I'm a big, like, what do you believe in? Like, what's bigger than you that we can be a part of?
Right.
Whether it's Black Lives Matter, or if it's human trafficking, like, there's so many things.
Yeah.
And I feel like people right now, I'm like, whoa, I've been seeing posts of, okay, stop human trafficking. Hey, Black Lives Matter. I'm like, everybody's getting involved now.
Yeah,
like, what
they
type
are.
of America do we want to live in?
Yeah, and it seems like, to me, there's the, we call it an autocorrection. When the pendulum swings back, and now people have had enough, and the injustices, we're trying to right them, and we're fighting for the systematic reform within police reform, and within not just for Black lives, but for Hispanics, for all races that aren't being treated correctly. Police reform on an entire level needs to be reformed, but it doesn't need, in my opinion, doesn't need defunded. Like, that's, to me, like a lunacy type of idea. But what bothers me is that type of narrative takes over because that idea gets thrown out there, and it muddies the message, where I don't want the message to be muddied right now. Right now, it's Black Lives Matter, stick to, and I had a buddy of mine the other day ask me, he's like, Robert, what does that mean? And I said, besides the obvious. He goes, what is it, what's the goal? And he goes, where do I go to find out what the goal is? He goes, because it feels like there's 16 different variations of Black Lives Matter now that has been adapted by some of the protesters and the rioters and the looters and stuff like that. He goes, I want to be on board, but I also don't want to support that type of behavior. So, me being, you're being a person of faith, how do you get on the front lines and separate yourself from that narrative, but yet keep the message clear? Like, I don't know how to do that. What would be your advice?
Everything's political right now, right? My biggest advice is, what can you do in your community or
Sure.
you know,
Keep it
online.
local.
Yep, to try to show support
Sure.
in that matter. But it is hard, right? And defund is such an aggressive word. I
Yeah.
wish there was a better word. And it's not
It's just the semantics. It's about giving money to different parts of the.
100%.
Yeah,
and
I know.
don't think people read past that, right?
Right.
Like it needs to be.
But time out though. Should they though? Should they? If the word is defund, and defund sounds to both of us like you're going to lose money. If they said they're going to defund the college basketball program here at Indiana Tech, you might go to a negative place right away before you listen, right? So to me, whoever started that narrative, they really muddied the waters because they didn't give the correct term or terminology. That's the problem I have with it. Defund the police doesn't sound like I shouldn't have to decipher what that means. You should tell me exactly what it is you mean.
Right.
So can you see where people might have a leg to stand on when they hear that?
Yeah, I do to 100%.
Okay.
But I think it's research,
Sure.
right? Like we want people to have open conversations.
Yep.
Don't just put "we will not defund the police."
Right.
Right. No, research what it means. Like,
Right.
and anybody that has kids in school or went through small school, public schools, they know there needs to be more money in education.
Yes.
Period. And I struggle with like teachers, right? Like it's not your job to make sure this kid's getting fed every day or can I take you home? Now
It's become our job.
it has 100%.
Yeah.
And now I'm appreciative for some of my teachers
Yeah.
and coaches growing up because I wouldn't be where I am today without them.
Sure.
But I also think there needs to be more help, right? There's not enough like funds or big schools, not in our small schools. Like
No, but
there's
yeah.
a cop at every door.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. But where are the counselors? Where are the psychologists? Like some of these kids just need somebody to talk to or
Yep.
to know how to navigate their problems or their emotions or different things. And
Yeah.
I really think things could get better if we would start there.
Well, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Like, I want to add on to that. Like, I feel like being somebody that's at the high school level, I always say this about high school, is to me, it is the most fragile ecosystem in all of the world. Any high school at any moment, because you never know what a kid is thinking, what they went through last night. You're asking these kids to come in and be ready to learn every single day, but last night their parents got arrested because of methamphetamine or whatever. Their parents got arrested last night because of a domestic abuse, or they didn't have any food last night, so they didn't get much sleep last night, and therefore now you're asking them to come be a student. There's so many different variables that take place within, and that's just one student.
Right.
And now you add at our district, we have 200 kids in our building, but can you imagine the bigger? I want to get to a point where I propose teaching a leadership class this year. And the reason I want to do that is because I think our kids need to start being better to their peers. They need to learn how to have confrontations in person and not on the technology. I think with those types of leadership tactics that we can put in at that level, and not just putting everything on add more counselors, because what that does is that take kids out of class more.
Right.
I'm still for, peer mentoring, getting more help. If you could have had somebody at an early age that you felt like you could have talked to all the time about the confusions that you might have been going through, or maybe you weren't going through them then, or, just anything and everything. I feel like that's where you need to start. Is this peer-to-peer, because I think there's more influence there than there is from adult to kid.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and you get kids out of their cliques.
Yeah.
Right? Like
yeah, you open that up more, yeah.
Right. We grew up on sports teams, right?
Yeah.
Those are your people, and it's easy to have conversations about other things. But did we really have any serious conversations in high school? Let's be honest about, oh, they're cute, they're not cute. Let's go here. Oh, do you want to go to their football game instead of ours?
That's all it was.
Yeah, that's all it was. So, but I think that's great because I think even adults struggle now to have open conversations.
Yeah, and even though those are the conversations we were having with each other, that doesn't mean we weren't thinking about all of these things.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I remember sitting down, being 13, 14, watching the news with the family, and not really asking too many questions, taking it in, and but you take it as affirmation at that time, as like, this is the way it is. You don't really, you're definitely not pushing back a whole lot, unless you have somebody or family that has taught you to do that.
Right.
You usually take everything as status quo. This is just the way it is. Well, if you're a youngin' today and you're seeing all the violence, or you're seeing Black Lives Matter, but you're hearing others say all lives matter, that just again starts a whole other generation of racial issues that we need to to combat against. So we really need to come together as a people, but we also, I think, if you can get ahead of it at the next generation stage, it will hopefully somehow help alleviate some of those issues later in life. I don't know. I still hope and wish inside those walls, but it's tough. It's tough.
It is tough, and when we go back to talking about like funding of public schools and stuff, your leadership classes, those are the first ones they say, we can't have those.
Right, those electives, yeah.
Yep, so that's, it's like, how can we make this financial, like
right.
when other money's going to certain things, like how can we get more money?
Yep.
Because it all starts there, right? It all starts with
the resources to be able to teach those effectively.
Yes,
yep.
100%.
Yep. You know, that's interesting that we're going down this road here. We just had our Democratic nominee for the president, Joe Biden. He just named his vice president candidate, Kamala Harris, and she is an African-American woman. And I'm just curious as to what you think the impact that will have on young African-American women or black girls that they can be that person someday. I think Michelle Obama was a great figurehead for somebody in that field that says, I can be something other than what I only see on TV. I can be a lot more than that. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's 100%. Like Michelle Obama, Kamala Harris, they're paving the way, right? It
yep.
gives young black girls something to look forward to or up to, right? Where there hasn't been enough, and that's one reason. Being a basketball coach, I support the WNBA.
Yeah.
Right. From that reason, like you're starting to see people that look like you doing big things.
Sure.
And it's possible. So it's going to college, just doing those little things, and having more mentors.
Yep.
Right. I think it's hard to learn from people that look like you if there's not a lot of them. So
right.
More power to both of them, right? So I'm definitely going to be kind of jumping on that bandwagon and just learning. I think that's the biggest thing is I want to educate myself so I can help other people learn as well.
Yeah, and I got to admit, I remember watching the Democratic debates. There was 20 different, I mean, it was hard to kind of sink your teeth into who you wanted. I was a huge Joe Biden guy back in 2007. And I actually wanted Biden-Obama flipped when it first started because I didn't know too much about Obama.
Right.
And then as I started doing my research, started learning, I quickly became, I understood why Obama was the nominee and it was flipped that way. I questioned afterwards, after he got the nomination, why he chose Joe Biden to be his running mate. I still to this day kind of question that because they seem like complete opposites. But I think that's kind of to the point of like Joe Biden. Are there stories that are going against him right now? Absolutely, and rightfully so, and they need to be looked into, especially the sexual harassment ones, how he makes women uncomfortable. And I'm not going to get into a comparison thing with the president that we have now because I'm above all that. But with Joe Biden, I hear this term like he's a lifer. Well, what a great thing to be somebody that's given themselves to public service for 40, 50 years.
Right.
Like that term gets thrown around and it's almost somehow in a negative connotation. I never understand that, how that gets used like that.
Yeah, I don't either. Like, I think that should be like, well, thank goodness that he's a lifer, right? Because he wants to do the service. And I don't think there's definitely a presidential candidate right now out of either one of them that's like, oh, they are perfect.
Right.
They're going to be great.
Right.
But who's more fit and who's an actual leader that wants what's best for people?
Right.
And is going to be surrounded by hopefully good people. And that might have different views than them, right? Like when you go back to thinking about him and Obama together, like they were different people.
Yeah, and it worked. It absolutely worked. Yeah.
And I think sometimes you need that difference of opinion and hearing different views. And we still won't agree with everything, but
nor should you.
No,
nor should you.
Shouldn't. And that's not our place.
Kamala and Joe definitely had their moments back and forth on the debate stage. You know, like they're not going to agree on everything, but it will help her check him on some things, and then he'll be able to keep her in check on some things. And I think it's that balance that helps push the American people. Now, we'll see what happens in November, but I think they're a good two. They're a good duo, at least.
I agree.
I do have a curiosity question for you, though. Because something he did that left a bad taste in my mouth. I love the fact that he's chosen Kamala Harris. I don't know too much about her, but I like her presence. I like the way she delivers information. I like the way she comes off as a leader. I don't know her policies yet to know that if she's somebody I support that much. I'm sure the fact that she's in the Democratic Party, that I probably agree with her more things than I don't.
Right.
With that being said, when Joe first started running and it was clear that he was going to get the nomination, he said, I'm going to choose a woman for president. Do you feel like with the things that are going on, and I don't want to take away anything from Kamala, but do you think she is a product of the time, or completely deserving of the position and got the job on merit? Or is this one of those things where it's like kind of like affirmative action in the sense where it came into play where it looks good on paper for the constituents? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, 100%. I think people could see it definitely both ways, and it could be a little bit of both.
I just wish he would have went about it differently. You know what I mean? Like, instead of, why did he ever make that comment? It's like, it felt like he was just pandering to the people to give him what he thought might help him win the election versus what he actually wanted. I don't know.
Right, and I think it's hard because, you know, especially when you have a camera on you 24/7, like, he maybe just meant to say, I think I need a woman by my side to help run this country.
And then Joe Biden does what Joe Biden does.
Yeah,
gaffes.
Thank you, Joe Biden. It didn't come out that way, but I think she's done some great things for California.
Yep.
And she's definitely a leader that I think people will back 100%. So
yeah, I'm curious. I'm going to do my research on her. I thought she would probably be the VP candidate, but we were talking off camera about the back and forth between her and Pence. It's going to get interesting, and I think more people might be. Oh, I hate to say this. I know a lot of people are saying that you're voting for the cabinet, you're voting for the VP for Joe because he. I don't know if you've seen it, but a lot of people think he might have early stages of dementia, and it does seem like he might. But I don't like talking about those things too much because what if they're not true?
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't know, but yeah. Anyways, I think she's somebody that could represent herself well, and I'm looking forward to the back and forth between her and Pence to see how she checks him, because we already know what Pence is about. So
yes, he's got to go.
Yeah.
Without getting too political, but he's got to go. So.
Sure. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. We're winding down here. One question, and it's probably something that I've asked you throughout the hour. I am just curious. It seems to me like you're at a place in your life now where you're you can breathe. You're happy. You've got this beautiful facility here. They just got a brand new court. I'm so glad I made the trip out here to see it. It's something that, wait till you see it when you get a chance. Come in person, Indiana Tech. If ever they play again, hopefully.
Right.
Of all of your titles, okay, being a proud now lesbian woman, a person of faith, growing up in a small, predominantly white neighborhood as a biracial, but to the obvious eye, a black female. What has been your biggest challenges that came from that? But on the other side, answer that part, and then if you can, answer what has been the greatest blessing that's come from those challenges?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge has just been accepting myself.
Okay.
Right? I think, like you said, being a Christian woman is you struggle so much, or even coming out. It's not an easy thing to do, whether you tell your friends or your family, but just figuring out who I am and loving myself enough to be like, this is who I am. Like it or not, this is how I'm going to live my life. And I think the biggest reward is just finding that wife, right? That person that I want to be with forever.
That person that compliments you and completes you.
100%. And being a wife allows me to be hopefully a great mother.
Sure.
And we just kind of live our lives based on, we will love you no matter what, right? I feel like
truly unconditional love.
Unconditionally. I feel like too many mistakes sometimes, or if you came in or Libby comes in and it's like, I did this, but,
right.
Or I will never tell you I love you, but.
Right.
No, I love you no matter what.
No matter what.
No matter what. And we will teach that kid to be strong, independent woman. Lord bless us now. We're really going to be in for it. But we want her to feel her feelings and to love and lead with emotion. And that's just kind of how I've kind of always lived my life.
Are you prepared for the challenges that will present to her growing up with two mothers? And just like anything, you grew up with two white parents. If they could have had more, I guess, how do I want to put this? If you could have had more of a, I'm not sure where I'm going with this. I guess what I'm looking for is that when you were growing up in a white household as a black girl, you were probably exposed to a lot of white culture. If you could have had more of a role in black culture, you said you didn't get to that until you were, a freshman in college, right?
Yes.
I'm sure your parents would have provided that for you if they'd known where or how or what they should have done, right?
Right.
Right. So you being a parent now and not a child not growing up with a father, perfectly fine. Are you prepared for any challenges that might present?
I'm not prepared.
Okay.
No, I don't think you could ever be prepared. We just want her to know, and the people around her that she becomes close to, that she's just raised on love. And
Yep.
I think that's the biggest thing. And we accept, anybody, and we want her to love other kids. And she's probably going to be that kid that somebody's picking on her friend, and she's
Yep.
probably going to kick, and I'm going to get a phone call, and I'm
Yep.
going to be thinking, yes, but Livy, trying to have that conversation. So we just based everything on love first. And we will do our best to answer those questions and be honest.
Yeah.
I think too many times you just have to have conversations with kids from an early age
Yep.
to introduce them to everything.
And let them find their path.
Yes, and
Yeah.
and be non-judgmental as
Yep.
much as possible. Easier said than done, right? We
Yeah.
all are grown up to
Yeah.
learn to judge a certain way and whatnot, but
We all judge. It's just being kind of a cognitive that you're doing it and
Yes.
try to be better than that moment.
Definitely.
So, yeah. Well, I got to tell you, this hour flew by for me. I don't know about you. I'm very happy that I drove here to meet you and see you again. Just thanks for being here.
awesome, Bobby. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I think she hit the nail on the head. At the end of the day, it is about self-discovery. I know I am still currently working on that myself. I'm trying to figure out what the best thing for myself, failing a lot and hopefully not failing the same fail over and over again, just being consistent. So as always, thank you guys for listening. Subscribe, please. If you click the link, hit that little button that says subscribe. Help me build my followers. But I appreciate everybody that does give us a check out. Everybody, you can check us out on Spotify, Instagram at Bobby Talks 3 Dots. Kylene, you got anything you want to plug?
No, be kind to one another.
Be kind to one another. I'm just going to let her have that. Bobby Talks. We'll see you down the road. Thanks, guys.